just want to say happy Halloween, everybody. There you go. So I guess I can talk a little bit about the, sort of getting into it for dancing. That sort of, I guess I came about sort of the end of high school. Born in the 80s, parents said you could do anything. I said I'm running off for the ballet school. They meant lawyer, so they had to kind of deal with that. So when you're a professional dancer or on any kind of sports team, getting injured can cost you your job. So most people are saying, oh, I'd like to be in better shape, or I'd like to feel healthier. But the difference when you are working as sort of an artist, right? There's very few jobs. There's a lot of competition. Injuries are quite scary in that job because, a lot of people will mask them. They'll take, ibuprofen, Advil. They had one on Celebrex that got pulled from the market. So people self-medicate very highly in these fields simply because they have to have their body to do things. And it's not, dancing is different than sports in the sense that you're there to create shapes. You're there to create an image. So you'll kind of have some sort of strange movement here where, a sport, it's about how fast you can go, can you get the puck in the net. So there's different sort of goals where you'll repeat movements that aren't necessarily healthy for you. And as a result, your body kind of breaks down because it's doing things that aren't natural for it. So what I discovered sort of over the course of the dance career is you have young people having pretty significant injuries, and it's not because they wouldn't have been able to recover from them, but they weren't given the time off. And also the access to self-medication was really, really high. Also in the dance world at the time, you had a lot of nutritional issues as well. That's actually been corrected quite well in the community, but it's certainly something where you'd see health, and these are young, strong, trained up 20-something-year-olds. Best friend of mine had a hip surgery at 23 from just having this one repetitive motion done. He just sort of medicated himself for 2 years, and then it just finally needed surgery. So that was the danger of that profession. So what I discovered, working sort of in Australia and in Calgary and Vancouver, is that when you were getting preventative adjustments, or you're doing your Pilates and you're changing your diet, you didn't really get injured as often, which was very good for your employment. So I discovered chiropractic just from the volunteer work they would do. They'd come to the theater, they'd adjust you before and after the shows, and if you're a male dancer working in a classical company, it's mostly lifting. It's mostly lifting, tons of jumping, really hard in the lower back, and kind of by the end, I retired around 30. That's when you realize you're not jumping as high as everyone else, and everyone's, 20. That's when you kind of discover that it's been very beneficial. So jumped into that, went to New Zealand, learned the chiropractic profession down there. I worked in Australia, so I'd always liked that part of the world. And coming back to Canada was a shock because chiropractic in North America is quite different than sort of Australia and New Zealand. And this is something I've still had to struggle with. Here, it's one of those things where you don't typically work alongside physiotherapists, and it's sort of a challenge in North America for whatever reason. There's sort of a stigma against chiropractors, wherein I found in New Zealand, it's a very outdoorsy tropical island basically, so everyone has a marathon time, everyone plays rugby, everyone's very active, so they tend to put more into their health, and everyone has a chiropractor. It's sort of the woman who won the gold medal in shot put is thanking her chiropractor at the Olympics, and you never see that here. You might get a physio, maybe, but it's a completely different culture, so it's been difficult to navigate, I guess, because there's quite a lot of negativity towards it. So the great thing about something like this, like Caregivers Alberta, and certainly the community in Edmonton that I've discovered, is it's all personal relationships, right? You're not going to have a lot of social credit because you're like, oh, I'm a chiropractor. They're like, that's nonsense. You're like, okay, so then if you're good and you're successful, it really is on your own merit. No one's going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So the upside to that is because of the scrutiny you receive, you are forced to operate on a higher level. So you have to go meet the physiatrist and the massage therapist and the physiotherapist and convince them that you are helping people. So that's sort of the difference, I'd say, between working in New Zealand and Alberta. But that being said, I've met some wonderful chiropractors in town. I'm actually currently I'm relocating to Calgary, so I've been sort of sending all my patients to different people in town, and it's a really wonderful community. For those of you who haven't seen a chiropractor, how many of you have actually been to a chiropractor? Oh, okay, well, that's different. basically the sort of four things that I try to tell people what we do as a profession is that your body is self-healing and self-regulating, number one. So that's fancy terms for if you are going to fight a tiger, what that means is that your body's going to react a certain way. So this is all the stress talk people have been saying, how your heart rate's going to increase, breathing's going to increase, muscles are going to contract automatically because you see a threat. If you happen to get bitten by the tiger and you just have to lie there, your body's going to self-heal, right? It has to set the bones, it has to make sure it's not infected, but generally speaking, your body's a very powerful healing mechanism. And in the scientific side, it's very hard to measure that. Like there aren't a lot of ethical trials where you can just injure someone, do nothing, and just see what happens if nothing gets done. They really don't allow that to happen around here. So that's where there's that variable where they're like, oh, the Band-Aid didn't heal your wound, right? The cast didn't fix your bone. You did, right? Your body did, and it took the resources upon it to do that. So because that variable is so, you can't really put a number on it, and it's different for each person. So your level of health will dictate how fast you can heal. So a good thing is a lot of people talk about smoking, and everyone's really, smoking's bad, all the kids are vaping, and that's right. Normally you think of asthma, coughing, lung cancer, when really probably one of the best reasons to not be a smoker is for surgical outcomes. Whether you're having your wisdom teeth removed, whether you're having appendicitis, the surgical outcomes, and you can talk to any general doctor about this if they're going to say, are you a smoker? Yes. Scar tissue chance of infection is substantially higher in a smoking population versus that, because your body is constantly dealing with that. It's that sort of general toxin, because it's a limited resource. You have only so many cells, you only have so many nutrients, and you have to make that available to repair tissue and knit bone. So, first concept of chiropractic is your body self-healing and self-regulating. And the second one is I can kind of hopefully illustrate with these guys. If you want to take your hand and just put it above your head like so, and wiggle your fingers. One finger. Now the thing is, none of you are looking at your hand, but you're all moving the one finger. So how do you know that if you're not looking at it? So you can bring your hand down. The reason why you know that is every single joint in your body and every single joint in the spine, and there are a lot of them in the spine, they're surrounded by capsules. And if you want to think of these capsules, they're like motion sensors. So even if it's over here, you know that your hands are here versus here. That message travels down the finger, along a nerve, through the arm, into the spine and into the brain. So your brain is telling you how this goes. Now that communication pathway is both ways. So it's information in your brain telling your hands to do this, or to do this, or whatever, or to dance, or to stand up straight. But the more important information is what comes in from the environment. So the really big thing is that, so the spine and the nerve is basically the gateway to the brain, which controls all of your movement, breathing, cells, memories, you name it. Your whole human experience is up here. And that pathway can have interference. So there's a number of terms. You can call them fixations. You've heard subluxation, I'm sure. The term that all the research in New Zealand is coming up with, they call it a segmental motor control unit. So that means that there is one of these joints, for example, is not behaving like the other ones, and it's sending altered motion to the brain. So what that means is your brain is getting the wrong information about how you're moving. Very good example from the previous speech where she's speaking about people holding their arms above their head. Not a lot of people in this society do that often. I see a number of different types of patients, and one of the tests is you get someone to stand against a wall, put their arms like this, and slide it up the wall. And a lot of people, and surprisingly younger people, I think it's because of phones, they can't even get to the full range of motion. Keep in mind that human beings are still animals. This is a very important thing to be able to do for survival, whether that's reaching, grabbing, pulling, hiding Halloween candy from the kids. You want to be able to do this survival tactic. So you want to be able to have that range of motion. You're born with it. You're entitled to this. This is something your body should have. But the thing is, when they talk about bad posture, the only thing that's bad posture is whatever you spend the most time in. For some people, it's standing on a factory floor. Other people, it's sitting in a bad desk. Other people, it's always playing tennis with the same arm and never training both sides. So it's individual. And basically where a chiropractor comes in is my job is to look at your spine, look at the joints, and then to make sure that those joints are fully functioning. So in the big picture, yes, it makes them sound, yes, it does, whatever, but the important thing about this is over the course of a month to 3 months, your brain is going to have that new pattern for your brain. So it's going to realize that, yes, you can lift your arms here. Yes, you can do this. Because part of it can be muscles, but the real key is retraining your brain. And the access to the brain is through the spine. So that's where getting regular adjustments is important. But there's a caveat. Some people don't understand that just because you're getting adjusted, it doesn't give you good posture. It doesn't give your brain the answer. What it does is it creates an opportunity neurologically to create a new habit. So typically with patients, you'd see a number of visits. If they've never seen a chiropractor, you work gently. You obviously you have to feel good, you have to feel comfortable, you work safely with someone. But after a week or two, it's like, okay, did you raise the monitor at your desk? Did you change the seat in your car? Have you looked at your shoes? Like, what is your body dealing with on a regular basis? In your week, what are you physically doing? And that's where a lot of the education around workplace, recreation comes in. But if you're getting adjusted regularly and you make those changes, that's where the big changes happen. The downside to this is you can sort of open the door with an adjustment as many times as you can for someone, but if there isn't a change, it will be very limited in its outcome. So that's sort of how, if you want to use a chiropractor as a resource, we typically know a lot of different healthcare professionals, and the knowledge base is really broad. We're primarily spine and nerve space focused, but a lot of concomitant medical conditions look like back pain, everything from whatever going on. So yeah, if you're looking at using a chiropractor, I'm not available in Edmonton anymore, so this is not a sales pitch, but I would say it's good to find someone who's going to take a month or two to take the time to get your spine fully functioning, and they should have information about other practitioners, and they should encourage you to look at your environment. There's a lot of talk about environment and how that affects your spine and habits. That's the key. That's the big part of it. So you need to have both of those. The reverse is true. You can change your screen and stretch all you want, but if you're not getting adjusted, you're not going to get the big outcomes. You're not going to get the big things. So I hope you've enjoyed my TED Talk. And yeah, this is just information. Thanks.